internship for the major, or it was recommended and you got credit hours for it, that I figured out what I wanted to do. So in my last semester, I did the internship, and I did an internship at Edgecombe County Sheriff's Office where I worked with the detectives, I worked with the patrol deputies, and I did all that stuff, and I just loved it. I mean, I wanted to go to my internship every day. It was fun to me. So I decided that I had enough credit hours and I could graduate early. I graduated a semester early with criminal justice degree and a psychology degree. So I graduated in 2018. My projected graduation date was 2019. So I graduated a semester early. And then during that semester, I went to the academy. I went to the police academy at Nash Community College, which is not far from Westland at all. That was difficult. It was hard. It tested my perseverance. It tested my will. I mean, everything. It was difficult. It was a lot of work. It was the first time I've ever had to do something like that. So I got through that, and once I finished the police academy, I got a job. Well, during the academy, I got offered a job at Wilson Police Department. I started there about 2 years ago. I'm on patrol right now, and then I'm going back to get my master's. I've also had the pleasure of being on the crisis negotiation team at the police department as well. So that's been great. And then I'm about to start my new journey at Westland to get my master's. So right now I'm kind of going back for my education portion, but I get paid more and it's going to help my advancement opportunities. So I'm excited for it, but I know it's going to be hard, especially working full time. I can't hear you. I can't.
I'm sorry, I'm muted so that you wouldn't hear. All righty. Officer Sullivan, thank you so much for that. Now, would you describe for us a typical day for you?
So when I describe this day, just realize that it is Wilson, and Wilson is a very busy city. So not every typical day at a police department or sheriff's office is going to be like this, but Wilson is very busy. I feel like working day shift and working night shift, I'm working two different jobs, because day shift, you have accidents, you have school zones you have to do, you have to direct traffic. There's just a lot of stuff that doesn't normally happen at night. So a day shift day, we're a lot busier with, I would say, petty calls. Every call is important, but the calls that you're just like, ugh. So I get to work at 7 to 7. It's 12-hour shifts. Sometimes it's 6 to 6. It just depends what shift you're on. But it's 12-hour shifts most of the time. The morning time is school zone time. So you go to the school zones, you help the kids cross the road, the typical stuff. You wear your little hat, you do all that. And then, like Wilson, you bounce from call to call. I mean, we are busy. Right now, our patrol team finally just got, as you would call it, stacked. We have a lot of people on our team right now, so it's not taking as many calls, but day shift is a lot of calls. Accidents, calls for service if somebody's credit card got frauded. Domestics are a big one. There's just a lot of stuff during the day. At nighttime, you can be more proactive. That's what I like to do. I like to stop cars. I like to search cars. I like to do all that kind of stuff. Find drugs, find guns off gang members. Like that's my thing I like to do. And I can do that more at nighttime because we're not as busy. With that being said, you're not as busy, but you have bigger calls. Meaning you have a robbery, like a gas station gets robbed, or a robbery of an individual, somebody breaks into somebody's house. The more serious calls are at night. So that's why I say it's like working two different jobs. At Wilson, you have a lot of advancement opportunity. Like I told you, I'm on the crisis negotiation team, and I've only been here 2 years, so it's kind of a big deal. I get promoted in June. It's called Police Officer 2. So I'm already getting promoted, which is another 5% raise and a stripe on my uniform. So that's good. And that's really it. It's pretty busy.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
So now the question is, what do you like and what do you dislike about your job?
So what I like about my job, I mean, I love my job. I do, but every job has their quirks. But the things that Wilson has that I really love are, one, the advancement opportunity. I think my 2 years is June 19th, so in a few months, and I get a stripe on my uniform. I had to take classes for it, but I mean, you have 2 years to prepare. So I get promoted. I've been on crisis negotiation team, And it's just like so many opportunities. There's always opportunities arising. I mean, positions opening up, things that they're willing to send you to. They're always pushing you to go to school to learn something new through the community college. So I really like the amount of advancement opportunities it has. I also like the community aspect of it. The police department and Wilson is very community oriented. We have a program called PAL. It's Police Athletic League, and it's where less fortunate children get to go to these camps for free and hang out with you. And I like to think it reduces the crime rate because those kids are now growing up knowing you, not saying F the police and stuff like that. They know you, they have a personal relationship with you. They know you picked them up for camp, you did all this. So I like that aspect of it as well. And plus I grew up my whole life with sports. Like I said, I played soccer, I played basketball in high school. So being able to incorporate sports and then hanging out with the children that are going to be the people I'm dealing with in the next few years, in good or bad ways, I like that as well.
Good. All righty. Thank you. If you have any questions for Officer Sullivan, please type them into the chat box and we will ask her those questions once we conclude the presentation by our guest. All righty. Attorney Jeffries. As you may recall, Attorney Jeffries is with the Legal Aid of North Carolina. And at this point, Ms. Jeffries, I'm going to ask you the same question. Tell us about yourself and your educational and your career path.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah Jeffries. I started Wesleyan in 2014. And I was actually 25 years old. So I wasn't the traditional 18-year-old who started at Wesleyan. And I went through the criminal justice program, the psychology program, and political science. And I thoroughly enjoyed myself at Wesleyan and all my professors, especially Dr. Marceau. And so after I graduated in 2017 from Wesleyan, I went directly to law school at North Carolina Central University. And this was a different experience for me in law school. The workload was very heavy. And the professors even cold called you to see if you had the answers to the reading that was assigned for the previous night. And sometimes you would get embarrassed if you did not have the answer. And so it seemed tedious, and I was like, why are they doing this to us? But last summer when I was studying for the bar exam, it made sense because everything that I've learned and everything that I prepared myself for during class, it all came back while I was studying for the bar exam. And so after 3 years of being in law school, I had to go on to study 10 weeks to take the bar exam. And the bar exam is a 2-day exam, which is 6 hours per day. And so all that hard work and all that preparing, it kicked in when I took the bar exam in July of 2020. And so after taking the bar exam, it's like a month waiting period for your results. And so you're kind of cringing like, did I pass or did I not pass? And so finally at the end of August, I found out that I passed the bar exam. And so the next step is to get sworn in and of course, find a job after all that school, right? And so I was applying for jobs. And then in October, I found a job at Legal Aid of North Carolina in Greenville, North Carolina, which I had went on several trips while I was at Wesleyan with what we had is the Women's Criminal Justice Collaborative. And we went on several trips to Greenville. So I was like, Greenville is an area that I may want to try to work in. So I applied there and I got a job at Legal Aid in October. And I got sworn in the same week that I started work, which was good. And then, let's see, where am I? I don't want to skip over your questions. What's the next question?
So let me jump in and ask you a question, and not so much a question. Some of our students may not be familiar with legal aid and what your organization does. Would you take a few minutes and share that with them?
Yes. So sometimes people think legal aid is a state position, but it's not. It's really a private company, but they get grants from the state and they get grants from several other entities in North Carolina and without North Carolina. And what we do is represent low income people who normally could not afford legal services. And we do it all for free for them because we receive those grants from outside sources, and then we represent the people for free. So as one of the other questions is, what's something good about your job? I believe that's good because we represent people who normally wouldn't get the services or the help that they need because they can't afford it. So I think that's something good. But then one bad thing about it is we can't help everybody. Sometimes the law just doesn't provide a remedy for everyone's need. And so sometimes we do have to deny people because there's nothing we can do for them legally.
Okay. Yeah. Ms. Jeffers, my other question was, describe a typical day.
So a typical day is different. Currently we work remotely most of the days, but on a typical week, I only go to court on Fridays because I do domestic violence work, housing work, and consumer work. And we have in Greenville, we have domestic violence court every Friday. And so I'm in court every Friday. But this week was a little unique. I had court on Monday and Tuesday. So I had an appeal in district court and then another case on Monday. So I was in the court a little bit more this week. So a typical day is different. And sometimes it's more than just legal work. Like I have a client where I had to be kind of a mediator between her and her landlord because they couldn't talk to each other without bumping heads. So I kind of had to intervene and call both of them and kind of calm them down. So it's a little bit more than just doing pleadings and, you know, talking to a judge in court. You kind of have to be a people person to kind of cut some of that argument out.
Well, that's impressive that as well as defending them from a legal aspect, you're also their advocate. So that speaks volumes. So roughly how long did it take you to find a job? You said you applied and had to wait. So you got notified you passed the bar and then?
So I was applying before the bar, but of course, nobody really wants to hire you unless they know that you passed the bar exam. And so I would say after August, I was applying like probably every day. I was applying everywhere I saw an opening. But when I believe I got hired at Legal Aid within 2 weeks from the time I applied to them until the time we had the interview. We had a Zoom interview because, of course, we were still in the pandemic. And then I was hired the next week. So that was pretty fast from the time I applied. But from the time I passed the bar, the end of August until October was roughly a month and a half, possibly.
Perfect. All righty. Last question from me, Ms. Jeffers. What's the most challenging case that you've had yet?
Whew,
and I'm hitting her cold because she didn't get this question sent to her. So this is off the cuff. Let's hear it.
It's a very good question. I have a lot. I think most of my cases are challenging. The most challenging are the housing cases because right now, because we're in a global pandemic, there are certain restrictions in place that keep landlords from evicting tenants for non-payment of rent. And then so you have to weed through all the new updates. For example, the CDC moratorium that's protecting people is expiring next Wednesday, which is the 31st. And so we have to figure out what are we going to do once this expires, or are they going to continue it? So I guess keeping up with the law is probably the most difficult. And because I'm a new attorney, I don't know all of the North Carolina law. So I'm learning the regular law and then keeping up with the new updates. So I think that's most difficult.
Good. Well, thank you so much. All righty. If you have any questions for Attorney Jeffers, I'd ask that you type those in the chat box. I do see that we already have some questions appearing and we'll address those at the conclusion. All righty. At this time, I want to recognize Associate Warden Groff, who is at Morrison Correctional Institute. And Associate Warden, I'm going to ask you the first question. Can you tell us about yourself and your education and your career path?
Wow, I'm probably the oldest student y'all got, I can tell you that. I started interest as a kid in criminal justice. In high school, we actually had a vocational program, junior and senior year, like automotive class or anything else, but it was criminal justice oriented. So I started there, got out of high school, went to the military for 4 years, Desert Shield, Desert Storm vet. Got out of the Army in 93, began being a deputy sheriff and a detention officer in 94. Did that for a couple of years and then went to prisons in 96. Worked my rank from correctional officer, correctional sergeant, lieutenant captain, assistant superintendent 1, or excuse me, assistant superintendent 2, to what they just call associate warden in custody now, which would be a 4. I've done everything from emergency response team, drug interdiction team, intel team, which is the gangs. There's a lot of things you can do in prison. So it's a pretty good career. You're not going to get rich, but it's productive.
Perfect. Describe a typical day.
Like now, as an associate warden?
Either one. You could. Why don't you do both? Why don't you talk about a typical day for a correctional officer, which would be an entry-level position, and then talk about a typical day as an associate warden? Let's do the correctional officer first.
All right. Once a correctional officer finishes their basic correctional officer training, and they get done with their mentor, which we never had when I was a correctional officer, the mentors. You're basically a patrol officer on a foot beat in the most dangerous neighborhood in your community. My facility's got medium and minimum custody. If I was full, I hold about 811 inmates. So if you figure on the medium custody side, everybody on that side, the 500 and some change on that side is a felon of some kind. You know, they're not there for jaywalking, they're not there for singing too loud in the choir. I've got probably 30 lifers at my facility right now. And some of those lifers are actually in minimum custody. You know, they've done well enough, behaved well enough through their prison career, that they're on the minimum custody side. They're working on a MAP contract so that if they stay out of trouble for the 3 years on that MAP contract, they're actually going to be released from prison and come back to your communities. But they search lockers, just like Casey said. You know, she searches cars, looks for guns and drugs. My officers look for drugs, weapons, contraband, anything an inmate's not allowed to have. They write reports on disciplinary infractions that the offenders, I keep saying inmates, we're supposed to call them offenders now. Offenders do. It's a lot of looking, a lot of listening. My job now is very administrative. I review reports every day, prepare reports. I got people who's constantly responded to tort claims where offenders file tort claims against the state for everything from missing property to feeling that their 8th Amendment rights been violated somehow. My biggest reports I do is review video and use of force footage and try to determine whether or not the officer's actions match in a report, match what I see on video and whether or not it's justified. And then of course it goes from me to the warden and the warden to the regional director's office and so on. And actually right now, next week, I'll be going for an interview to be promoted to the region operations manager. So if I do well enough on the interview and it's my time, I'll promote and stay around a few more years. If not, 17 months, I'm out the door. And I'll be hopefully teaching at the community college criminal justice curriculum, because I'll be done with Wesleyan here May 1st, I think it is, if I'm not right. If I'm not wrong, I'm sorry.
Mr. Groff is in our master's program at Wesleyan, and so that's what he's alluding to. So, and we're excited that you're almost finished, because it's been a journey, hasn't it?
Yeah, and COVID's compounded everything in daily life and school life and work life. You know, everyone on the video conference knows what I'm talking about. So
absolutely. So, Associate Warden, you know, you've come up through the ranks. And so one of the things that our students might be interested in hearing is that basically the best way to come into a correctional facility as a CO, or can you come in through other avenues?
You can come in through other avenues. We actually have a warden at what was at one time the largest facility in the state, at Scotland Correctional. She started as a pharmacy tech. She started as a pharmacy technician in the prison, at McCain Prison Hospital, which is now closed. Went to be correctional officer, moved her way through the ranks, stayed on the custody side of the house the whole time. We got case managers, which are certified officers, but they come to work in, civilian type attire, and they manage an inmate's case, educational, substance abuse, all kinds of stuff like that. Prison, if you think of prison as a community within your community, we have medical staff, we have maintenance staff, you got custody staff. I like to tell people that the inmates are your community. The correctional officers, the uniformed correctional officers are the police. Your medical staff's like your urgent care. We have a canteen there, so it's like the Circle K or the Kangaroo, whatever's in your community, where you go buy your snacks and stuff. There's teachers that come in at Morrison from Richmond Community College to teach the offenders everything from the high school equivalency test to electronic wiring, culinary arts, and commercial cleaning at my facility. On the minimum side, we even have a CDL class. We're one of 3 facilities in the state that an offender can actually have their CDL license just short of driving the truck by the time they exit prison.
That's impressive.
Prison has one, Polk Youth Institute, or Polk, not Youth Institute no more, Polk has one, and my facility has one.
That's impressive. That's something new. That is awesome. So what do you like and what do you dislike about your job? And let's go from being a CO all the way to where you are now.
It's my likes. Correctional officer, known it was stable employment, and back when I was a correctional officer, it was actually fun. We had what I like to call convicts, seasoned offenders. And I worked the only other inpatient mental health facility in the state, which was Hope Correctional at the time. You had Central Prison and Hope Correctional for the men. Of course, women's prison had the female offenders who were had mental health needs. I'm talking like inpatient Dorothea Dix based type offenders, not just basic substance abuse type stuff. It was almost comical. They kept you laughing, but only a certain amount of us was allowed to work up there because they knew they didn't want the staff to agitate the offenders. They wanted us to be able to professionally deal with it and have a good time with it at the same time. I worked restrictive housing, which used to be called segregation. And also at the time, Hope Correctional had the only protected custody inmates in the state. Ex-cops, ex-lawyers, people like Hell's Angels and outlaw motorcycle gang members, all housed there, or high-profile case people there. I've had a former district attorney incarcerated on my block. A former correctional sergeant. So I'm a rookie correctional officer, and I'm working a block with a guy who was a former correctional sergeant. And you can't BS them on what policy is. I mean, even though he's an inmate, he knows what policy is. The former attorney knew what the law was. So things like that, you learn a lot. You can learn every day at work. I guess the bad things are dealing with things like you've seen in recent history, the homicides of the correctional staff, the officer and the nurse at Iowa Correctional. We had our own homicide here just a few years ago up at Pasquotank, and right before that at Bertie. It's a dangerous job. You walk into the most dangerous neighborhood every day. You got to think about that. In my position as an administrator, all you can do is hope and pray every day that your staff's going to be okay and do the right thing.
Perfect. All righty. Thank you. All righty. I'm looking at our time and we're at 7:30. And so we have about 30 minutes left, I think. So why don't we jump on some of the questions? Katie, Christine, I'm not sure who's going to handle those.
Okay. Katie, is that me? All right.
Yep, Christine, if you'll just start from, I guess, the top and work your way down. I saw a couple pop in.
All right. This one is for Cassie. I did just create a message. I do want everybody to know this is being recorded just in case you didn't see the message at the top, okay? Cassie, how do you feel about the current political climate as it pertains to police officers? Specifically, the focus on police brutality. Is it harder to be a cop right now?
So like I told y'all, I've only been a cop for the last couple of years, and I think the climate's pretty much been like it is for the last couple of years. I know the older guys at my work, they always say I couldn't be a police officer right now. If I had to start right now and had 30 years left, I couldn't do it. I think it is hard because no matter what you do or how you treat people, if somebody has an opinion on police officers, they're going to put you in that. I get all the time, you kill people. I've never killed anybody. It's just really tough when you do everything you can to treat somebody with respect and treat somebody the way you would want your daughter treated or your husband treated, and they still think that you're like the bad apples. I think that does suck a lot. But then you have a lot of support as well when people have their blue line flags, and you see people telling, like, they pay for your meal. It's not about the money, but when somebody just does a gesture like that, it kind of mutes everything else until you go to that next call where somebody cusses you out for just wearing a badge or wearing a uniform. So yeah, it really does suck, but it also comes with its perks. Like I said, you have a lot of people that hate you, but you have a lot of people that support you. And and I don't know, a way to think about it is, if you're not a police officer, if you're just a normal person walking down the road, just imagine if somebody just randomly walked by and hated you because of the shirt you were wearing. That's kind of what it's like right now. And that's really unfortunate, but it's what I signed up for, I guess. But it comes with its perks. So I can't answer the question that says the current climate, because I've always worked in this climate. This is what I'm used to. I started 2 years ago. I mean, the climate's been the same for, I'd say, probably 4 or 5 years. So I can't answer in detail about the previous climate, but the current climate, that's just how I feel about it. I feel like some people hate you for what you wear, but some people love you for it. So you get what you get.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cassie. That was a great answer. Ms. Jeffers, since you work in legal aid, do you get assigned cases? Can you choose what type of cases or / law you work on, such as criminal, civil, estates, etc.?
Good question. So we do get assigned cases. We don't necessarily pick the cases. Everyone goes through the helpline, the legal aid helpline, which assigns cases throughout the whole state. So, and you do get hired for a particular area of law. So I was hired for housing and consumer, and the reason I do domestic violence cases is because everyone in the house, everyone in the office does domestic violence cases because there are so many, and so we share the domestic violence cases.
Okay, we have one for the warden. I currently work in prisons, and my goal is to become an associate warden of programs. What advice do you have to get there?
Can you repeat it one more time? It was kind of loud where I was at.
Sure. It says, I currently work in prisons, and my goal is to become an associate warden of programs. What advice do you have to get there?
Not knowing if they're on the correctional officer path or the case manager path. You can switch back and forth, and actually by the time you're an associate warden or warden, I think if you have experience on both sides, you'll be a better warden. Because I'll tell you the truth, I know very little about programs compared to what I know on custody side of the house. But be a case manager, be a program supervisor, become a program director, then become an associate warden on like the program side of the house. And education. As much in-service training. We got LMS training. If you got 15 minutes to do LMS training, grab the training. LMS is online stuff for us.
Okay. The next one is, it's not directed at anybody in particular, is can I become a magistrate without a criminal justice degree?
Yeah, you can. There's a specific, it's like it's a short school you go to be a magistrate. I don't believe you need a criminal justice degree, but there is a school you go to be a magistrate. It's you'd have to look it up, but it's I think it's like 2 or 3 weeks.
Sarah, I saw you start to answer on that one also.
Yeah, that's true. I don't believe you have to have a specific degree, and you definitely don't have to go to law school to be a magistrate.
Can I chime in on that one as well?
Sure.
I don't think they really care. I don't want to say don't care what your degree is in, but they do prefer, typically from what I've seen, at least a bachelor's degree of some sort in order to get in the field. They do prefer too that you do have some understanding of the process and the system before you get in there, because they're not able to just go in and not have any clue what's going on. We have another question for Greg G. Do you believe that our prisons are overfilled? I see the comment a lot in the news about, I'd like the perspective of someone who works in that field.
No, prisons are not overfilled. Right now, my prison's probably at 500 out of 800 beds, and that's both the minimum and medium combined. There's actually a lawsuit right now, and the ruling was made by Judge Razier out of Wake County to start releasing offenders. They want to release like 35 or 3,800 offenders in the next 5 months. So they're making preparations for ELCs. They're finding offenders who's already, close to getting out and seeing if they can give them merit time and such to put these offenders back in the community. If you watch the news also, you see the recidivism of these people who's on ELCs, who's on extended limits of confinement. That's what ELC is. So they're actually still pulling their prison time. It's kind of like being on parole. And they have to abide by the rules and regulations, but then they go out there and they mess up and they have to come back to prison. So prison is still a revolving door. The likelihood of coming back to prison if the offender gets educated, like I think the statistics are like 53% chance less of reincarceration within a 3-year period of time if the offender gets a GED or high school equivalency. And then if they get a vocational or trade, the percentage exponentially increases to keep them from coming back to prison. So we focus on trying to have the offender re-enter into society and be productive citizens, regardless of what they did in their past. But for some reason, a lot of people take the easy way out, live the life of crime, and come back to prison. And I don't know if it's the structure or the fact they know they got a roof over their head and meals and health care and stuff. Everything that we work for out here, it's so much easier for them, but then they don't have the rights and the freedoms that we do as free citizens.
And let me jump in here. Associate Warden is talking about the number of inmates that or offenders that they are releasing. So the other thing that we're seeing as a trend in our field is that probation parole is having vacancies, lots of vacancies. And so there are job openings there. One of the other areas where the greatest job availability is in the prison facilities, correctional officers. So, corrections is often a field that our students don't even consider, because you think prison, ooh, yuck, I don't want to be locked up with those individuals. Well, let me tell you, having worked in the field like Associate Warden, I can tell you it's not that bad, and it's a good job and it's a steady job. The retirement and the benefits are wonderful. So, I would encourage all of the students that are with us tonight, don't just close that door on prisons or probation parole, because that's where our jobs are right now. The jobs are also in law enforcement, but a lot of people don't want to do law enforcement. So look on the correction side.
Mm-hmm.
I have 35 vacancies.
You have 35 what?
I have 35 vacancies. I need 35 people to correctional. Come on down.
Wow.
There you go.
I'm going to go, I have a question, and then I'm going to go back to that in just a minute, Ashton, okay? The next question I would guess would be for Mr. Goff, is, are there any programs in place for reducing the revolving door prior to release?
I would say that's probably a probation and parole type question. That's the other side of the umbrella for DPS corrections. I know there was some day reporting centers and stuff back in the day for offenders to go to. I believe there's some educational opportunities where there's federal monies afforded to the state for these folks to go to vocational programs to hopefully prevent them from coming back or coming at all.
Mr. Groff, talk about the programs that are available inside the facility to prepare them for release. I think that also addresses the question. And Melissa, I see you nodding your head, so I know that you know exactly what he's talking about. I see you, so go ahead. Mr. Groff?
Like I said, most of our facilities partner with the community colleges in the area to at least get them a high school equivalency, GED. A lot of facilities have trade schools, brick masonry, carpentry, welding, electrical engineering, culinary arts, so on and so forth. I worked at Randolph Correctional for a little while. We had a dog program there where we got dogs from the local shelter and the offenders trained the dogs. So those dogs were basically shelter dogs. They were on death row. So they made those dogs where the dogs would be basic obedient trained and can go to a family. Some of our facilities had PAWS program. McCain had the PAWS program, puppy assistant with sight. They trained these dogs to help blind or visually impaired people. The facility up at Caswell, they had a dog program that trained dogs to like detect people having seizures, or if they had some kind of physical impairment, that go get the mail, go get their shoes, go get something to drink out the refrigerator, and go get the medicine, things like that. We have Scotland Correctional has inmates who type books into Braille.
Oh, wow.
There's Meineke Automotive certification program there. I mean, there's tons of stuff for inmates to do if they just take advantage of it.
Right. Good answer.
Okay. Oh, great. I'm going to go back to Ashton's question, and then we've got a couple more. Generally speaking, what potential career paths are out there for someone who can't be an officer due to physical limitations, but will hold a 4-year degree in criminal justice? Also, not considering law school at this time, having a hard time finding where I could potentially fit.
Go ahead, sir.
Was that my question, or was that for Casey and the judge?
It just goes to everybody, I think.
I think Sarah's going to answer it. Sarah?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it. In some of your clerk's office and the DA's office and the sheriff's office, there are sometimes positions for advocates, like family advocates who advocate for the victims, maybe help them through the process. So there are positions like that within these larger career fields that you may not know exist. And so they do have like advocate positions, or maybe a clerk or something like that. Those are some other options that are related to criminal justice that wouldn't be typical for someone who didn't know.
Perfect.
So there's also, like she was saying, like at the Wilson Police Department, we have forensics team. So the forensics team, like if a major crime happens, let's say we have a homicide or a robbery or anything like that, they come out and they handle the crime scene. So it's basically like the crime scene people you see on TV, but we have that at the police department. That wouldn't require your physical limitations. That wouldn't be a problem. They photograph the crime scene. They pick up the evidence, put the evidence up. They analyze fingerprints. It's a bunch of stuff like that. So that's a position you could think of as forensics. We also have property workers at the police department, and they handle all the property that is seized. So any marijuana, any drug, or any guns, anything like that, they handle it and they store it and they make sure that it's kept uncontaminated. Rape kits that are down there, everything. It's like a whole system they have. So that's another option as well that you have at the police department. And then, like Dr. Marshall was saying, probation parole also.
So Cassie, you're saying that your forensics unit is civilians?
Yes. Our forensics unit is civilians. But they still work at the police department. They have
the next.
So let me jump in here. Let me jump in here also. There is another agency that our students often do not consider, and that's DMV. DMV has an entire wing that does fake IDs. They investigate stolen license plates. Some of those are sworn positions. Some of them are not. And so I would encourage you to look there. The DMV office has just opened and moved their headquarters from Raleigh to Rocky Mount. There are positions there, and they are actively trying to recruit our students. So I would go and look at DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles.
And again, in prisons, your case managers, your officers, sergeants, lieutenants, captains, program directors are not certified. The associate warden is. But there's tons of non-certified positions: administrative personnel, medical staff, maintenance staff. We have trust fund clerks that keep track of the monies for the prison, trust fund clerks that keep track of the inmates' monies, personnel, like I said, records keeping, inmate files. There's jobs out there. You just have to go on the job website, nc.gov, and find them.
That's right.
Our next question is for everyone, for all of you. How do you take care of yourself from burnout or being jaded from your day-to-day with seeing sometimes the worst of what humans have to offer? And how do you remain unbiased but also safe and effective?
I'll jump in on that.
Thank you.
I used to run quite a bit. I used to run 5-6 miles, 5 days a week, 10 miles on Sunday, half marathons and such like that, until I had an injury that stopped me from running for a while. The running, to me, the physical adrenaline, and it was a peace of mind, such as dealing with the stress of that, because you are going to see stuff that you wouldn't even read in a Stephen King book. I'm going to tell you, there's some hateful people in this world. And if you come to criminal justice, prisons, street police, you're going to see it. Divorce is high in criminal justice professionals' lives. Suicide's high. Substance abuse is high. So you just have to find the right sources and the right outlets to keep yourself sane and healthy.
So something. Do what?
I was saying, anybody else?
So yeah, something the police department does is if you're involved in a very heinous or emotional crime scene, they offer, well, it's kind of mandatory actually. They make you go to, it's like a group setting. I wouldn't say it's a therapy session, but it's like a group session where you kind of talk about what happened and you talk about what's bothering you, how you've been recovering from what you saw. A bunch of different stuff like that. So that's really good that the police department offers that, because I mean, it's really helped me from experience. I've been to a couple of them, and just talking to everyone else who was on scene and telling people how you were feeling about it as opposed to how they were feeling about it and how they've been coping with it. It's kind of good to talk about it with your teammates, which is basically your family, because you see your teammates more than you see your family, honestly. So it's good to have those little vent sessions when you see something traumatic.
What she's talking about too, guys, if you don't know, it's usually called CISM, where it's considered debriefing or defusing, so that you can air out everything, and it's supposed to be confidential and it's a non-judgment zone. So that's one of the things that can be helpful. Is that correct, Cassie?
Yes, ma'am. And it's definitely a non-judgment zone, and it's definitely confidential, because I work with grown men. I've seen grown men cry in those meetings. And it's good to be there for one another and still have feelings. Like, you get so numb to some things that you see. So when you go to these meetings and you get to express your feelings finally and actually feel something, because on scene you have to keep a straight face. I mean, the masks are helping with your hiding your emotions, but you have to keep a straight face. So when you go to these meetings and get to talk to everyone else who is on scene and actually get to let out your emotions, it's a lot. It makes you kind of feel human again.
So I did want to chime in at the end. So at Legal Aid, our supervisors do encourage us to take like mental health days. And so if it's a day where we don't have court or we don't have a deadline due, we're free to take leave for the whole day. Like if you want to sit at home and watch TV, that's fine, as long as you have the leave time and nothing is due on that particular day. So they do encourage us to do that. But on a regular basis, one thing I like to say, like, find something that you love to do and then make time for that something. Like if you love to watch movies, make time for you to watch movies or do whatever it is that you love. I wouldn't recommend watching Netflix for a whole day, but make time to watch one movie that you like or something that you like to do, just to get a break from work.
Okay. Our next question is not directed at anybody. It says, I want to work in analytics, helping to provide scientific evidence to aid in starting programs or other systems to help reduce crime. Is this best done in corrections, law enforcement, or policing? Or law or policing?
I can chime in on that. So you said, sorry, I'm trying to read the question as well. Help reduce crime. So like I was saying earlier, our PAL program, I don't know that there's been scientific studies done on it and exact numbers, but from experience working with the children, 15-year-olds to 16-year-olds, keeping them playing sports, hanging out with the police, stuff like that, I really do think that's going to really reduce crime. And I think it does, because you see them on the streets, and I mean, playing basketball, you drive by them, they're like, oh, hey, Officer Sullivan, come shoot some hoops. And it's just your relationships with those children that are going to be the people that grow up with you as you're progressing the job. So I think that if you want to help reduce crime, I don't think any agency would be opposed to you doing a scientific study on their community policing. I know a lot of people or a lot of agencies strive towards community policing. But Allison, if I can get you in touch with some people at the Wilson Police Department and see if there has been any scientific evidence to support that. But any individual that's interested in helping reduce the crime rate and helping with community policing is somebody that the Wilson Police Department would love to have on board. So I can give you my contact information if you want to talk more about that.
Okay. Melissa, I don't know where Melissa is. I'm not sure what this question is. It's the behavior aspect, mentoring and mental health opportunities prior to release. So I guess that's for Mr. Groff about going back to the programs.
Yes, that is. I was pretty much trying to get an understanding from that aspect. I apologize. Yeah. I'm always doing something extra, right? But yes, that was what I was asking, because one of the things that I've noticed is the revolving door is crucial. And one of the things that I think may be hindering, us from having a more successful rate of individuals staying out versus in. We have the good programs, we have the school, we have the education, we have the this, but it's the mindset. Are we working with the mindset? Are we producing programs that are able to appeal to their thought pattern prior to leaving out? Because we can educate them and they can be intellectually prepared to come out, but if they're not emotionally or mentally prepared, that was what I was pretty much asking. Do we have those programs? And if so, is the educational path that we're on, like myself with political science and criminal justice, am I in the right area for even trying to connect the dots in that area? Did I say that right? I hope I did. Y'all, I'm hungry. I apologize. I'm just gonna be honest. That's what I was doing. stirring up my little soup because I got hungry. I apologize.
Yeah, I think you're on a good career path. We have licensed clinical social workers that work within the prison. We have substance abuse counselors, your case managers, help them see they get a battery of tests to figure out which path they need to go down, what assistance they need. And that's how they help place inmates at different facilities across the state, because not every facility has exactly the same thing. They got to look at custody and control for the inmate. They have to look at length of sentence for custody levels. You have to look and say, does this inmate have a victim? Can he be housed in the same county in which the crime was committed? There's a whole battery of things they look at. But your education is not going to hurt you in any aspect of the law enforcement community's career fields that you may pick.
Allison also added to the question about burnout. To add to the burnout question, how do you all separate work from life, especially the heinous crimes? I'm thinking that may have already been answered by Officer Sullivan and Ms. Jeffers and Mr. Groff. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was already answered. I had typed that question as they were coming in.
Okay, wonderful. One more, Officer Sullivan. What do you say to the Wilson community that has lost faith in the police?
There's not much to say to somebody when they've lost faith of something. I don't know if anyone has ever lost faith of anything in their lives before, but you kind of get closed-minded. So I don't say much to them. I just try to prove myself to them by respecting them and treating them how I would want my family to be treated. So it's not much of saying something to them. I don't sit there and lecture them and try to convince them that I'm different than the rest or different than the bad apples. I prove to them that I'm going to treat them with respect and I'm going to treat them fairly.
Are there any more questions? No? Okay.
All right. Well,
sorry, I was trying to drink. Is it okay if I just ask a question because my keyboard's messing up?
Sure.
This would be for Ms. Jeffers, I think. I currently work at a law office. I work with John Crisatiello. I don't know if you've heard that name or not. But one of the things that he does a lot of the drug charges, and I'm very interested in how that's taken from a legal aid perspective because a lot of these people come in and you know, there are people who can't afford that representation. So I'm just curious how that works on your side when you get these lower income people coming in and they have these charges and whatnot. Like, I guess the best way to ask this, and I'm trying to find a way to ask this, it's not necessarily rude because I don't want it to come off that way. I'm just not very good at wording things. But like, how do you handle that with people who maybe are like less educated or less knowing when it comes to law? Like, how do you do that? Because the clients that we get, they come and they kind of know what they want because they've all been recommended towards this place. So I was just curious with what legal aid does.
I think I'm going to take a stab at your question. First, I do want to clarify that legal aid, we do civil work. We don't do criminal work. And so if there's someone who's low income and has a criminal issue, they would probably be referred to the public defender. And so we do more civil work. But as far as interacting with people who I guess are not educated on the law, we understand that they don't know the law. They didn't go to school like we did 3 years in law school. And so we just treat them as regular people, like just like we have family members who don't understand how the law actually works. We just talk it through and let them know what their options are and give them an opportunity to make decisions of what they want to do with their particular situation.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? All right. Well, this was great. You guys had some great questions. I know I learned a lot about the different industries. So I really appreciate everyone joining the call, especially our guest speakers and our students, to learn more about their prospective careers. you know, in adult studies, we always tell our students to be the change that they wish to see in the world. And every industry, every organization has challenges. Criminal justice may not be unique, but they do have unique challenges. So I would encourage everyone to not shy away from those challenges and face them head on. We need more people with these ideas and these beliefs to be positive role models and positive change agents. So at the end of this, we're going to send everybody a survey. We want to hear from you. We want to know what was done well, what you would like to see. This event was created based on what our students said that they wanted to see offered to them. So your opinions and your input is extremely valuable to us as administrators. And then just don't forget, our second webinar is going to be on April 1st at 7 p.m. And it will focus on how can I market myself for a career in criminal justice. So thank you, everyone.
Katie, let's share with them who will be there for the session on April the 1st.
Sure.
So we're going to have Kim Williams, who is Judicial Manager for Community Corrections in Eastern North Carolina. We're going to have Chief Hopkins from Wilson PD will be there. And then Stanley Melvin, who is a Regional Director for Juvenile Justice, will be here.
Great. So everyone have a good rest of your night. I can hear my 2-year-old is about to lose it, so we're going to go get her to bed. But thank you again. If you have any private comments that you want to share with me, please feel free to reach out to me. You have my email, but I will be sending out that survey by Monday at the latest.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Good night. So, Sarah, just a side note, she left, didn't she?
Yeah.
Yep. We just have one more.
Okay.
Give me 1 second. Okay, let me stop recording.